You have ever felt like you are walking in circles, fighting with all your strength, but prosperity always seems to slip through your fingers? You know that feeling of waking up every day, working hard, doing everything right, but at the end of the month looking at your bank account and feeling a tightness in your heart? It is not just about money. It is about that deep feeling that something is blocked, as if there were an invisible barrier between you and the abundant life that God promised. I know exactly what that is like because I have been in that dark place, where faith did not seem to be enough and prayers seemed not to reach heaven. But let me tell you something that completely changed my journey and that can transform yours too at this very moment. There is a specific psalm, a divine revelation that Oral Roberts discovered and used to break the chains of spiritual poverty. And today you are going to know this powerful secret that has transformed millions of lives around the world. Oral Roberts was not just a preacher. He was a man who understood the spiritual laws of prosperity like few others in his generation. While many religious leaders spoke about prosperity in a superficial way, Oral Roberts dug deep into the scriptures and discovered something that most people miss completely. He found that spiritual poverty is the root of all financial lack, and that there is a direct connection between our spiritual state and our material reality. This was not just theory for him, it was something he lived, tested, and proved throughout his entire ministry. The psalm that Oral Roberts used as a foundation for eliminating spiritual poverty was not random. It was Psalm 23, but not the way most people read it. While millions recite this psalm mechanically, without truly understanding its transformative power, Oral Roberts discovered the hidden layers of revelation within these ancient words. He understood that when David wrote, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," he was not just making a poetic statement, he was declaring a spiritual law of abundance. Think about this for a moment. David, who wrote this psalm, went from being a simple shepherd boy to becoming the king of Israel. He experienced one of the most dramatic transformations in biblical history. But before the crown, before the palace, before the riches, David understood something fundamental about God's nature as a provider. He understood that when you truly recognize God as your shepherd, lack becomes impossible in your life. This is not positive thinking. This is a spiritual principle that operates in the invisible realm before manifesting in the physical world. Oral Roberts taught that spiritual poverty manifests in several ways that most people do not recognize. It is not just about not having money in the bank. Spiritual poverty shows up when you feel unworthy of God's blessings, when you believe deep down that abundance is for others but not for you, when you pray but do not really expect God to answer, when you give but do not believe you will receive, when you work but feel like you are laboring in vain. These are all symptoms of spiritual poverty, and they create an invisible ceiling over your financial life that no amount of hard work alone can break through. The brilliant insight that Oral Roberts had was understanding that Psalm 23 is actually a blueprint for eliminating every form of poverty from your life. Let me break this down in a way that will change how you see this psalm forever. When David says, "The Lord is my shepherd," he is establishing the foundation of all prosperity, which is identity and relationship. You see, sheep that belong to a good shepherd never lack anything because the shepherd's reputation depends on the condition of his flock. If a shepherd's sheep are thin, weak, and sick, everyone knows that shepherd is failing. God's reputation, in a sense, is connected to your prosperity. When you truly understand that you are his sheep and he is your shepherd, you realize that your lack makes him look bad, and God will never allow his glory to be diminished. This is why Oral Roberts was so confident in praying for financial miracles. He understood that he was not begging God for something God was reluctant to give. He was simply aligning himself with God's desire to display his glory through provision. This shift in understanding is what separates those who experience breakthrough from those who remain stuck in cycles of lack. When you pray from a position of being God's sheep under his care, rather than an orphan begging for scraps, everything changes. The prayer becomes a declaration rather than a plea, and declarations move heaven in ways that begging never can. Now, the second line of this psalm is where Oral Roberts found the key to sowing and reaping. "I shall not want" is not just a statement about the present. It is a prophetic declaration about your future. Oral Roberts taught that when you declare, "I shall not want," you are actually planting a seed in the spiritual realm. Words are seeds. And the words you speak over your financial situation are either planting abundance or planting lack. Most people spend their days speaking poverty over themselves without realizing it. They say things like, "I can never get ahead," "Money always runs out," "I am always broke." And these words are seeds that produce a harvest of exactly what was planted. Oral Roberts discovered that Psalm 23 gives us the language of abundance to plant instead. Every time you declare, "I shall not want," you are contradicting the lies of lack and planting a seed of abundance. But here is what most people miss, and this is where Oral Roberts' teaching becomes really powerful. The psalm does not stop at declaration, it moves into action. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. Notice the progression here. First, God provides the green pastures, which represent abundance and provision. Green pastures are where sheep get fat and healthy, where there is more than enough. But then, God leads you beside still waters. In the Middle East where David lived, still waters were rare and precious. Rushing water was dangerous for sheep because their wool would get heavy and they could drown. Still waters represented peace, safety, and the ability to drink deeply without fear. Oral Roberts taught that this is the picture of prosperity that God intends for you. Not the anxiety of chasing after things, but the peace of being led to provision. Not the stress of striving and struggling, but the rest of being in the right place where abundance flows naturally. This is why so many people work themselves to exhaustion but never prosper. They are trying to create provision through their own effort instead of allowing God to lead them to where provision already exists. When Oral Roberts prayed for people's finances, he often prayed this principle over them. He would ask God to lead them beside the still waters of provision, to bring them to the green pastures that already existed but they could not see. And testimonies poured in of people who suddenly got unexpected job offers, who stumbled upon business opportunities they had never considered, who received inheritances they did not know existed. This was not luck or coincidence. This was the shepherd leading his sheep to provision that was already prepared. But here is the part that Oral Roberts emphasized more than anything else. He restores my soul. Before you can experience financial restoration, you need soul restoration. Your soul is your mind, will, and emotions. And if your soul is damaged by past failures, disappointments, betrayals, and wounds, you will sabotage every financial blessing that comes your way. Oral Roberts saw this pattern repeatedly. People would receive financial miracles, significant sums of money would come to them, but within months they would be broke again. Why? Because their soul was not restored. They still had a poverty mindset, they still made decisions from a place of fear and lack, they still attracted and tolerated people who drained their resources. Soul restoration is the process of renewing your mind to think like God thinks about money, healing your emotions so you are not driven by fear or greed, and strengthening your will so you can make decisions that build wealth rather than destroy it. Oral Roberts created what he called a prosperity prayer based on Psalm 23, and he encouraged people to pray it every single day for 40 days. The number 40 is significant in Scripture. It represents a period of testing, transformation, and transition. Moses spent 40 days on the mountain receiving the law. The Israelites wandered 40 years in the wilderness before entering the Promised Land. Jesus fasted 40 days before beginning his ministry. There is something about the 40-day period that creates a spiritual shift, and Oral Roberts understood this principle deeply. The prosperity prayer went like this, and I encourage you to write this down and begin praying it today. Lord, you are my shepherd, and because you are my shepherd, I shall not want. I declare that lack has no place in my life because my provider is the owner of everything. You are leading me to green pastures of abundance that I cannot yet see, and I trust your guidance more than my own understanding. You are leading me beside still waters where I can drink deeply of your provision without fear or anxiety. I receive the peace of knowing that my finances are in your hands. You are restoring my soul right now, healing every wound of past financial failures, renewing my mind to think thoughts of abundance, and strengthening my will to make wise decisions. I am not a victim of my circumstances. I am a sheep under the care of the greatest shepherd in the universe. Oral Roberts taught that when you pray this prayer with genuine faith every day for 40 days, something breaks in the spiritual realm. The strongholds of poverty that have held your family for generations begin to crack. The invisible barriers that have kept blessings away from you start to dissolve. The spiritual atmosphere around your life begins to shift from lack to abundance. But here is the crucial part that separates those who see results from those who do not. Prayer without action is dead. Oral Roberts never taught people to pray and then sit passively waiting for money to fall from the sky. He taught that prayer positions you spiritually, but then you must take action in the natural realm. The shepherd leads, but the sheep must follow. God will show you opportunities, but you must have the courage to walk through the doors he opens. This is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where many people miss their miracle. Let me tell you about a man named Robert who attended one of Oral Roberts' crusades in the 1970s. Robert was a factory worker who had been stuck at the same income level for 15 years. He worked hard, he was faithful, but he could never get ahead. He came to the crusade desperate and broken, feeling like a failure as a husband and father because he could not provide the life he wanted for his family. Oral Roberts prayed over him and taught him about Psalm 23 and the elimination of spiritual poverty. Robert committed to praying the prosperity prayer every day for 40 days. But here is what made the difference. On day 12 of his 40-day prayer journey, a thought popped into Robert's mind. It was an idea for a simple tool that could make his factory work more efficient. In the past, Robert would have dismissed this thought as random or unimportant. But because he had been praying and his spiritual sensitivity was increasing, he recognized this might be God leading him beside still waters. He sketched out the tool design, built a prototype in his garage, and showed it to his supervisor. Within 6 months, the company had implemented his tool across all their factories, and Robert received not only a promotion but also ongoing royalties for his invention. Within 2 years, his income had increased by over 400%. This was not magic, this was the principle of Psalm 23 in action. God restored Robert's soul first by helping him see himself as more than just a factory worker, then led him to the green pasture of opportunity that had been there all along, but he could not see it because of spiritual poverty. The 4th verse of Psalm 23 is where Oral Roberts found the key to overcoming the fear that keeps people in poverty. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Fear is one of the greatest enemies of financial prosperity. Fear makes you hoard instead of sow. Fear makes you play it safe instead of taking the faith risks that lead to breakthrough. Fear makes you suspicious of every opportunity and skeptical of every promise. Oral Roberts understood that spiritual poverty is rooted in fear, specifically the fear that there is not enough, that God will not come through, that you will end up destitute and abandoned. This fear is a shadow, it is not the reality, but it feels so real that it controls people's decisions. The shadow of death in this psalm represents the worst possible outcome you can imagine financially. Bankruptcy, homelessness, complete ruin, public humiliation. But notice what David says. Even in that valley, even in that worst-case scenario, I will fear no evil. Why? Because you are with me. The presence of God eliminates the power of fear. When you know deep in your spirit that God is with you, that He has not abandoned you, that He will never leave you nor forsake you, then even financial disasters lose their power to terrorize you. Oral Roberts lived this principle personally. There were times in his ministry when he faced enormous financial pressures. Building a university, maintaining a worldwide ministry, these required resources that sometimes seemed impossible to obtain. But those who were close to Oral Roberts testified that even in the most intense financial pressures, he maintained a supernatural peace. He would quote Psalm 23 and remind himself that the shepherd was with him in the valley, and if the shepherd was there, then fear had no place. This is the faith that moves mountains and opens the windows of heaven. The 5th verse is where Oral Roberts found the promise of abundance in the presence of opposition. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Most people think they need to wait until all their enemies are defeated before they can prosper. But this verse reveals a different reality. God sets a table of abundance for you right in front of those who doubt you, who said you would fail, who predicted your downfall. Your prosperity becomes a testimony that silences every voice that spoke lack over your life. The anointing oil represents empowerment and enablement. God does not just give you abundance. He anoints you with the ability to create wealth, to see opportunities, to make wise decisions, to attract favor. And the overflowing cup is the picture of more than enough. Not just barely getting by, not just having your needs met, but having so much that it overflows to bless others. Oral Roberts taught that this overflowing abundance is actually God's plan for every believer. Not so we can live in selfish luxury, but so we can be conduits of blessing to a world in need. When your cup overflows, you can fill the empty cups of those around you. You can fund ministries, support missions, help the poor, invest in kingdom purposes. This is the ultimate elimination of spiritual poverty, when you move from being a consumer to being a contributor, from needing help to providing help. The final verse brings it all together. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The word surely is a declaration of certainty. Not maybe, not hopefully, not if I am lucky, but surely. Goodness and mercy are not chasing you, they are following you, which means everywhere you go, they go. Every situation you enter, they enter. Every challenge you face, they are there with you. And this is not just for a season, it is all the days of your life. Oral Roberts would often tell people, stop chasing blessings and let blessings chase you. Position yourself as a sheep under the shepherd's care, and goodness and mercy will follow you wherever you go. Now, let me give you the practical application that Oral Roberts taught for using this psalm to eliminate spiritual poverty from your life right now. First, you need to make a decision today that spiritual poverty is no longer acceptable in your life. Not next week, not when circumstances change, but today. Speak out loud right now. I refuse to live in spiritual poverty any longer. I am a child of God, a sheep of his pasture, and lack is not my portion. Second, commit to praying Psalm 23 out loud every morning for the next 40 days. Not just reading it, but praying it, personalizing it, declaring it over your life with faith and expectation. Third, ask God every day to show you the green pastures and still waters he is leading you to. Be sensitive to ideas, opportunities, and divine connections that he brings across your path. Fourth, take action on what he shows you, even if it seems small or insignificant. Remember, Robert's $1 million idea started as a simple thought during his prayer time. Fifth, every time fear tries to grip your heart about money, quote verse 4 out loud. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Sixth, begin to see yourself as someone whose cup overflows, someone who has more than enough to bless others. Start giving, even if it is small amounts, because giving breaks the grip of spiritual poverty like nothing else. When you give, you are declaring that you trust God as your source, and that trust opens the floodgates of heaven. I want to tell you one more story before we close. There was a woman named Patricia who heard Oral Roberts teach on Psalm 23 in the early 1980s. She was a single mother with 3 children, working 2 jobs and still could not pay her bills. She felt like a complete failure, spiritually and financially. The night she heard this teaching, something broke inside her. She realized that she had been living in spiritual poverty, feeling unworthy of God's blessings, believing that abundance was for other people but not for her. She made the commitment to pray Psalm 23 every day for 40 days. On day 8, she had an idea to start a small catering business from her home. She had always been a good cook, but she had never considered it as more than a hobby. She started small, just doing a few events for friends and church members. Within a year, her little home business had grown so much that she was able to quit one of her jobs. Within 3 years, she opened her own restaurant. Within 5 years, she had 3 locations and was employing over 50 people. When she was interviewed years later and asked what made the difference, she said, "Oral Roberts taught me that I was not a victim. I was a sheep under the care of the greatest shepherd. Once I got that revelation deep in my spirit, everything changed. I stopped thinking like a poor person and started thinking like a child of the King." The money followed the mindset. That is the power of eliminating spiritual poverty using the divine revelation of Psalm 23. It is not a magic formula. It is a spiritual principle that aligns you with God's heart and God's plan for your life. Now, before you go, I want you to understand something crucial. This video found you today for a reason. It was not an accident that you clicked on this. It was not random that you watched all the way to this point. God is trying to get a message to you that your season of lack is coming to an end, but you have a part to play. You have to make the decision to break free from spiritual poverty and step into the abundant life that Jesus died to give you. If this message has stirred something in your heart, if you feel that spark of faith rising up inside you, I want to ask you to do something important right now. Click that subscribe button, because this channel is dedicated to helping people just like you break free from financial bondage and step into biblical prosperity. We are building a community of believers who refuse to accept poverty as God's will and who are seeing miraculous financial turnarounds in their lives. When you subscribe, you are not just subscribing to a channel, you are joining a movement of people who are reclaiming the promises of God over their finances. Every week, we bring you teachings, testimonies, and practical strategies that combine spiritual principles with real-world action. We are seeing people get out of debt, start businesses, receive unexpected financial blessings, and step into the overflow that God promised. And here is the thing, when you hit that like button, you are not just helping the algorithm, you are actually sowing a seed of agreement that says, I believe what God has for me is greater than what I have been experiencing. There is power in that simple act of faith. Also, make sure to turn on notifications, because some of our most powerful content drops at specific times, and you do not want to miss the message that could be the key that unlocks your breakthrough. Share this video with someone you know who is struggling financially. Sometimes we are called to be the messenger that God uses to reach someone else, and your simple act of sharing could be what changes someone's life forever. Remember, goodness and mercy are following you. The shepherd is leading you to green pastures and still waters. Your cup is about to overflow. This is not just positive thinking. This is the promise of God for your life. Receive it today, walk in it daily, and watch as spiritual poverty is eliminated from every area of your life. God bless you, and I will see you in the next video where we continue this journey toward biblical prosperity together.